Hello everybody. I'm Kathryn from the Sewing Studio at Lady Lake and the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore here in Maitland. Welcome everyone. Okay, I can't wait to talk to you guys today about this excellent tip that we have for especially quilters, but for everybody in general. It's about lining up those seams, making sure everything is lined up perfect. Good example behind me. Everything is all lined up perfectly. So today we're going to talk about how you can pin to make sure everything gets lined up to where your seams are not skewed from one another. Okay, so let's get into it. So first of all, this is what we're looking for right here. We want to have all four of our squares lined up where our seams are exactly where they need to be and the edges of our pieces are meeting exactly where they need to meet. So that is the goal. That's perfection right there. That's what we all want. This, on the other hand, is not what we want, where we end up with just a little bit of a skew. That's not good. It ends up being something that you will see. Of course, everyone else around you probably won't even notice, but hey, we can aim for the best, right? All right, so what we're going to do is you start by taking your four squares. When you have your four squares ready, you're going to sew your contrasting pieces together. So you're just going to sew your little 1/4 inch seams on everything and get those contrasting pieces together. Once you've got your contrasting seams together, you're going to press your seam allowance in the opposite direction, okay? So if these are my bottom two pieces, that seam allowance is going that way, and these are my top two pieces, that seam allowance is getting pressed that way. So you end up having to do a little bit of pre-planning. So you're pressing your seams in the opposite direction one from another. All right, once you've done that, you're going to nest your seams. So as I started to research this, I'm like, nest? What does nest mean? Well, nest means you're putting your seams together. So you're butting them up where they're meeting right here, okay? So what we do when we nest our seams is you're going to feel the ridges of the seam allowance as they butt up against each other. You'll feel the bulk on one side and the bulk on the other side as they match up, okay? That's nesting. Once you've done that, you're going to insert a pin in your stitching exactly at the meeting point between the two separate blocks. Then you're also going to check the back that it's coming out at exactly the seam, not away from it. For instance, we wouldn't want to enter here and come out over here away from where we need to be. So you're checking it and making sure you're exactly on your stitching line. Now, here's where the magic happens, is that you should insert a second pin perpendicularly to the first pin. So if my first pin is right along my seams, my second pin, which locks everything together and keeps it from shifting, is going to go horizontally. So this one is where the magic happens. All right, so what we're aiming for is something like this, where all of our seams are lining up perfectly. All right, here's another example. Something like this, where all of our seams are just exactly where they need to be. All right, so what happens is, especially when you get a piece that has multiple layers, so this one has 8 little seam allowances all needing to meet up. When you only use the one pin, you can have shifting happen because the one pin went here, so that seam is good, but look at everything else. None of the rest of it is lined up the way that it needs to be. So that second pin is where the genius happens. Then you end up with something that looks like this, where everything is lining up. Look how perfect that is. Right along there. Look at this one. Right along there. Everything lines up the way it should. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. So let's take our 2 pieces of fabric, okay? Eric, if we could go up close on this one. All right, so we've got our 2 pieces of fabric. So on this one, I've got it where my seams are pressed off to one side, and on this one, my seams are essentially pressed off to the other side, okay? So I'm going to lay my 2 pieces of fabric together. Now, you can shift them as you're shifting your fabric. you're going to kind of roll your fingers back and forth like that so that you can feel your seams butt up against each other. And actually you can kind of feel it locking itself in. So once you start to feel that under your whole thumb, you're going to take your pin. Once you have your pin, you're going to insert right exactly at your seam. Once you're at your seam, you're going to check the back that you're coming out exactly at your seam, okay? When you come back in, don't come in over here. You want to enter right at your seam line again. And then you're going to come out exactly on your seam line. So that's the one pin. Then you're going to take your second pin and you're going to, in the cross purpose, perpendicular to that first pin, lock it up. So that's what you end up with. And again, that's what helps you create this beautiful lining up of all our pieces by doing 2 pins, not just the one, but the other, ends up where you don't have this kind of a situation where it is locked in one way but not every other direction. That second angle of pin helps you achieve everything being perfectly lined up. So that's it for today. We have other videos on our blog section at www.sewing.net, so you can go back in and check out that education and inspiration. And we also have a YouTube channel. If you look for the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore, which is a big purple dot, you can get on and see what videos we have there, including one on how to clean your machine, which is always a good one to watch. Thank you so much for spending time with me, everybody. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Mercedes, for helping me get these pieces together. All right, bye, everybody.